I looked over the. Gotta check out and see where all the characters go, right, and see where they line up. See whether it makes sense. And of course it's been going to be reappropriated so that book 2 doesn't jump 10 years, but rather doesn't even jump a year between the two, so that they can line up, and then they don't have to introduce new generations of soldiers and stuff like that. And actually skimming through the what would amount to book 2, it doesn't really need to be. They do what they're going to do contained in book 2 before there's I think there's 18 chapters in book 2. So we're not going to chapter 18. We're going to stop at around 17. And we're not going to go because the last half of book 2, or the last third of book 2, even less than a third, is a completely different story, taking a different crew in a different direction, meeting the Totemis, the machoistic aliens, and then some main characters die, and then these other ones come back, and then there's a sneaky stuff going on, and there's also finality to some of the main characters. I don't necessarily want to do that this time. We wrote it, so I'm going to change my own stuff. So it's not studio interference at all, because we're people doing it. There's no one interfering. It's that book 2 has issues that are systemic throughout the whole thing, and that we want to just tell the story that's book 1 and then book 2. Book 1 is a little long, is the thing. Book 1, the remainder of book 1 comes off. You could easily crank out 2 movies out of the end of book 1, because there's so much going on, and so that would segue into book 2 if you make it the same timeline and move it out. And and then it would be like, okay, you have movie 3 and movie 4 and movie 5, basically. Also, a lot of the space battle stuff, you don't really can't really do that so much. I don't know how we're going to do that, and it gets escalatingly crazier as it goes on. You do get to see in book 2 Captain Arlene Benton, who apparently got double promoted because it's like a Star Trek, the Abrams Trek thing. There just weren't any other captains left. There were this was the captain. You get to see that, so that's fine. You get to see, but you don't get to see the invasion of the Dark Ride planet. No, you get to see the Dark Ride planet. You don't get to see the invasion of Totemis planet, because that story is kind of ridiculous and it wouldn't work. We're not doing that one. Just not doing that. That's even more ridiculous than it's essentially the same idea as them seizing the Dotal ship from the last story, except it's a planet, an entire planet. No, that really, really doesn't make sense. How would that even work? But no, that's why we're not doing that. So this is gonna take us up to the part where Harldigan shows up later. Also, you can't kill Char until the end of middle of book 2, when he reappears, because Char needs to show up in book 2. So you need to carry him on to book 2. Then you can kill him off. If you want to, the character. And there seems to be a running theme about the military in the story are incompetent, which is kind of messed up. Some changes of names that aren't going to be relative. There's a Stevens and a Swimmer and something else. You're not going to need to worry about it, because when you watch the movies, they kind of are self-contained, and you can watch them and go, they're self-contained. Each one of them is kind of self-contained. I mean, the first one was a first contact raid alien thing. The second one's the Second Contact, another raid alien thing. The third one is, let me start this over. Yeah. So what I meant to do originally was we're going to do 3 films based on the first book of Cohnirri Space, right? There's 3 films. The third one is the Cat Planet one. Turns out there are 4 films in there, or at least part of, there's pretty much 4 films in there. So you have an additional 100 pages at the end that's clearly another film that's on the end. So you have the war with the Dotol War. And so you got to tell that story, and that's another 90-page story. So go tell that one. That brings us to 4 movie stories, and out of book 1, book 2 would be an additional. Well, that would be 4. So there would be 3 more movies in there. It turns out it's pretty long. It's pretty long in terms of the blocking, but it's not long in terms of the story. It's actually shorter than book 1. Book 1 had 4 movies in it, whereas book 2 has 3 movies in it, and that's partly because we're not including the last 200 pages, which dealt with autonomous, and we have written them out. I rewrote some elements of the second book for episodic form, set it about a year after the other stories instead of 10 years later, and thus moved everything up. The alien planet thing happens, the trial of the alien Lord bad guy happens, the fate of the Kaleen happens, the fate of the other one happens, all that stuff. And then I tacked on an ending. Yeah, there's a tacked on ending, which has a reference to the Star Trek at the end. Yeah, there's a tacked on ending. But I wanted to affirm them that the whole autonomous backstory thing had been deleted, and just to be funny, the future character is Cassins from the bioship, the AI from the bioship. I'm assuming he's a hologram, basically. He shows up and he's like, but he has powers. He's a hologram with Q powers. He's Cillian. So he shows up and they asked him where the autonomous went, and he goes, "Oh, they were canceled. They're Clan Adol. You call them the Clan Adol. They canceled them. Those guys, and Space Marine Clark shows up at the very end. So it's 2488 in that timeline, and it's don't need to know all that. The movies kind of tell their own story. We will see what happens, though. There are 7 of them if you count them all together. And we will see whether we only get to the 3 or not. And it's still up for debate whether we need to show the Dotol War with the Pura or not. If we do, then it kind of becomes like a space opera DS9 battle thing, more so than it is a regular story. If they don't really want to do that necessarily, then you kind of have to do other things. But let's see what we've got there. It would only be up to book 2, and about the middle of book 2, and and it wasn't originally formatted that way. I printed out the other books just as episodes. I didn't format them as a script, so they were very hard to read. So I fixed that, reprinted them again. So there's a few more to follow if you want to. Don't have to if you want to. You could end it with movie 4, with them going, okay, they've defeated the Dotol. That's the series. It's over. But there's a little more in there, and all the threads get fixed up by the end of the middle of book 4, book 2, and would be inspired. So. And it's kind of more grounded this time around, too. You don't need to have everything be like uber dramatic planet exploding stuff. It can be a base ship. It doesn't have to be that. But Harald again wouldn't have been in it again at all unless it would have just been a one-shot. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to include him in there. There was some Harald again stuff later on. So we wanted to include him because he was fun. There's also a recurrence of Char, so you can't kill him yet. And he's complex enough a villain that you kind of want to keep him around just for fun. Holt, though, not so much. Um, yeah, so, yeah, okay, movie 3 in production right now on the 27th or 28th. What was today? It's not yet Chinese New Year. It almost is. What is it? Anyway, so yes, You're the Snake. Yeah, movie 3. Let's go. I don't know if this matters in terms of script revision, but I think originally this was meant to be a scene with the captain and the doctor on the planet, and it was changed to Michael. It should be the doctor. It should be the doctor on the planet, because Michael's on the Adamson, and he retrieved the other guy. Or this is presumably days later. But yeah, so it's Michael. It's not Michael. It's the doctor. And he says lines that are doctor-like, so it's the doc. Yeah. So, about 21, 22 pages into the third movie. 23 pages is roughly 14 minutes, give or take a minute or two. Yeah, so we've started into the production. There were breaks in the footage where we had to stop, do other things for like hours, come back. Tomorrow there shouldn't hopefully be any, and we'll continue there. But for the evening, we are stopping now. And yeah, so yeah, the third movie is off to a start. We're on the planet. It's a planet based. It's a Planet Hell set. It was Bottle Show. The other two movies were Bottle Shows, with a brief soundstage set being Mars. This is just the Mars set. It's been redressed as the other set. This is a Mars set, and just changed it into the Jungle Planet. It'll be the same set as in the other ones, but we'll see. Also, in terms of making of and stuff, jumped ahead a little bit and printed out the other stories, but we will see. We will put together the 3, and we will see. Not saying we're definitely going on to do 4 and the other ones and 5 and 6 and 7 other movies. We're not saying that yet, even though we've printed them and made them the right format. We're still not sure whether we're going to actually do that. Probably just the 4th one before Starship. We shall see. Because the 5th one through the 7th one would be book 2, because it's considerably more condensed and shorter. And this is book 1 up until movie 4. This is book 1. Yeah, similar stuff going on. Yeah, so yeah. It's just behind the scenes of this particular episode. This is another 20 minutes. Not done. Well, we want to go into lunch, but we will complete the rest of this third of the movie today. And yeah, so there's with the other camera, I guess, second unit. So we have, but this is first unit. So we have, there's a character coming up called Jennifer Stevens, or just Stevens. It's not supposed to be Slayton's ex-wife. It's somebody else. She's named after the Paquette girl from Young Swan. That's silly. That's later a Jennifer Swimmer as well, but that's later. It's supposed to be probably the same person, so it's another alien person. We'll probably name her Julia just for fun or something. Anyway, so Stevens. We have to introduce some other characters down on the planet. Antonio's group goes to find Char next act. We'll see what's going on with that. Also, we've condensed the story arc, because when you're watching this as a movie, only half an hour's gone by, and it's like it can't be weeks later for those different scenes. It wouldn't make sense. It's got to be like maybe days go by in that 20-minute interval, maybe, or just days. And the supply ship was on its way. It left immediately. To go there. Because otherwise it gets pedantic and long and boring. And I know so we have some character development with the different characters, which is why I left that stuff in. However, we've changed other stuff later on, where there's a new service thing that's not in there anymore. There's destruction of the other ship. I think that is in there. But you'd think that Purr's fleet would know that the Earth forces weren't that defensible. Same thing with the other invasion of the other planet in the second book. because really, they're miles of space fleets shooting each other in space has the same problem that Star Trek Discovery did, in that you that's not interesting if everybody's shooting at everybody. It's just not interesting. Interesting, a review of the other Section 31 thing was reviewed, and by Red Letter Media, pointing out that they're doing their thing. Not to go on a tangent about that, but the idea is that here we have character development, a story, and characters and places, and all of our fan films are a love letter to Star Trek, but indirectly they're also originals. There was a comment. Somebody commented on the second movie. Some random person commented. And it's our stuff. It's original, but we're just calling it a Star Trek parody because it has Star Trek-like elements and thought and reason and theme. It's very Star Trek-like, let's say. And you can have a parody that isn't a direct riff parody. You can have a parody that is just themed that way. For instance, classic example, Galaxy Quest. It's not Star Trek. It's spoofing the idea of Star Trek. Yeah, that comedy, Galaxy Quest. Airplane is spoofing the idea of an airplane disaster movie. It isn't literally Airport 77. It's a spoof of it, of that kind of movie. Yeah, the movies later on, that kind of thing. This is kind of a semi-serious story, though. It's about ecological disaster, war, and aliens, and things like that. So that's fun. But in the story, a very Star Trek ecological disaster story. That was also the premise. This story is also a premise of what would have been my idea for the fourth Abrams movie. That we're going to go down to a planet and be on the planet, and the whole thing was going to be a planet story, like kind of like Beyond was, but a little bit more. No revenge alien guy attacking them. That part would be gone. It would just be an ecological weird thing going on. And actually, the bad guy that does show up at the end isn't out for revenge, because that's dumb. He's a bully. He's an asshole. He wants to go kick butt. That's all. And they have to stop him. That's all. So he has no motivation other than he's a bully. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, he's not out for revenge, because that's dumb. Calicat the Calicaster. We have blazed through the first part. We did 20 pages yesterday. We did 30 pages today. We finished section or 3-act play, the first act of the third book, the third movie in the middle of the first book, third movie, and yeah, so we finished a third of it. Because there's nothing else going on, we're going to continue into a little bit of this. That's the middle one, the second act. Yeah, probably won't be that much though. Just a little bit. We'll see. So this is Calicat the Calicatster. So before we begin, on Chinese New Year, yeah, we want to the Space Fleet scene, the end of Iceland story. In this, which is kind of this episode, and the escape of Holt is coming up next. A lot of it was actually cut out concerning a news service that was interviewing them, because of course this part was written during the Evergreen Flyer days back in the 90s, and it would be so cool if they had a news service. That's not in there anymore, so don't worry about that. There's a little bit of pieces of it here and there, but yeah, it's sort of like a trial of the bad guy alien later on in book 2 wouldn't make sense either, because no one wants to sit there and watch a trial. Just like no one wants to watch a modern political thriller as a sci-fi story, just because, yeah, it instantly dates it. Okay, we're making fun of so-and-so. Yeah, gee, wink. No, we're not doing that here. This is not anything to do with anybody current. These stories are all about people 20 years ago or so. The whole thing is before that. I also wanted to point out the probably what the millennials watching this will be asking: why isn't there internet in it? Ooh, the internet and cell phones and stuff. Well, watching people text on a cell phone is boring. Just like in the 90s, watching people type on a computer is boring. So we're not showing that, because that's not story development to stare at a screen that's doing. So that's boring. Also, they wouldn't have the internet. I know in Star Trek they seem to have a space internet that goes over subspace, and they're able to like contact alien planets and other parts of other solar systems. That part of Star Trek is a little iffy and weird because it doesn't work. The internet only works because it's a television broadcast signal over around the Earth using satellites and communication devices. Off the Earth, it wouldn't work. The planet comm wouldn't work off the Earth. It wouldn't, because you're in space. They have some kind of a hyper radio in this that allows them to go to space. That's how it works. I guess that's how it works in Star Trek as well, subspace radio. It really wouldn't, but how does it go faster than light? And it would be faster than light to get from planet to planet. It would be faster than light. In fact, faster than the ship is traveling. So they can contact each other while at warp or something. It really doesn't make sense. But visually, if they made it an accurate sci-fi story, it would take them years to talk to each other. So I can see why they did that. Made it more like internet and they're on a phone call. So, we tried to lessen the appearance of people talking on view screens and doing that kind of thing. I think it worked well in the last episode, so why not go in this one? And as for the space war that is inevitable in the story, I still don't know how we're going to film that. I guess we're just going to use stock footage that we have from the Transformer thing. I kind of have to. This is our version of Corrosion, of War Without End. But our version, it isn't really, though. It isn't really. The only thing that makes it similar is there's a battle in it. It's completely different. Also, the dialogue is better than that of current Star Trek shows. We could literally say, yes, it is better than current Star Trek shows, which is funny. It is. Section 31's dialogue was terrible. It was absolutely awful. Current movie. And they used a character that sounds like one of our characters. But his dialogue in ours is better than their version of the character. It's fine. So we open to this next scene where we go to this other ship, Viceland's ship. We see Viceland again. She's a Guinan action figure, but she's not meant to be Guinan. She's Viceland. She may be another Elorian that's similar to, maybe that's what she is. But in the original script, she was a character named Anderson, and Anderson was the president. She was meant to be this other person that, she wasn't Viceland. What did we call her? We called her, Vickers. Noella Vickers is what her original name was, Vickers. And she was sort of a nod to, it's like a queen character, but sort of the queen apparent thing. But she wasn't acting like one. She was her own thing. This is the end of her character. These bad guys are attacking, and that's very much like current Star Trek. But nope, it was years ago, 20 years ago or more. The story came out. The finished book came out in print in 2019, 2020. But the story is very old. This whole segment is very, very old. I would say 1996 or so. It's around there. That's the way it plays out. There's one episode that's 50 minutes of the story. And also there is kind of alien guy wants revenge, but not really. His motivation is power, not revenge. He's more like Megatron. He wants power. So that's a little different. He doesn't want revenge necessarily on them. He's gonna cut and run. He's gonna shoot at the good guys and then run off. So he doesn't even want the credit for it. He arms the power and energy thing on the planet, the gun, and then leaves in the story. So he clearly doesn't necessarily want to humiliate them and take credit for it. He just wants to humiliate them and leave. He's Weasley and sneaky and evil. And also there was the action figure, the Favala. There's an easy way around the Favala thing. Favala was supposed to be this little alien lady, bug lady. We found the figure later for this movie. So it just basically had the other guy say, oh, I was a Favala, but she's the true Favala over there. That's all you need. You don't need a convoluted, like, that thing there. Yeah, that's all you need to fix that. Plot holes are easy to fix when you make them yourself. But basically we said, okay, this other guy was maybe Favala in Letamok culture is a title. And there you can say that. She has that title, like maybe it means advisor, or maybe it means mercenary leader, and it's just generally mercenary leader. So you're saying mercenary leader, okay, mercenary leader, and the reason she's able to control the shapeshifter guy, even though that's not consistent with Trek, it's more consistent with silly Trek. Because he's in humanoid form, his neurons are just like a human, so she messes with his head. So she's playing him, even though the other bad guy is probably right there, like in the same room. But see, his motivation is power; it's not revenge, so he didn't care. Anyway, it makes sense in the story. Watching the dailies, it makes sense. Completed about 50 minutes of the dailies, first pass footage for the third movie, but somewhere in the middle of book 1. We're still in book 1. Book 1 was long. It's still in book 1. There's still, after the third movie, there's still an hour of information, 100 pages or so of information after that. So in book 1, I'm sure we can work around that, work through that, do this first, and then worry about that. Finish the Catman story, and then that. This segment will be primarily the ship stuff. There was some stuff cut out of the beginning of it, though, because it was going to be boring if we filmed it. They cut it out. They didn't need them interviewing each other. We didn't need them going back and forth going, oh, haha, I'm evil. Because that is kind of like modern Trek, and we don't want to do that. How about he doesn't say? How about we don't know? I think that's more mysterious and interesting. They just fire a gun. They don't know who did it. Is actually funnier and more punchy and darker at the same time, without being so dark that it's dark and visually you can't see it. And as for the quiet dialogue, like complaining about that in another story, it's like you can have quiet dialogue and still be heard. Yeah, and that was a problem with a lot of modern shows and storytelling and stuff. Doing that whole soap opera thing, I must whisper secretly to you, and whisper to you, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you can still enunciate. I must whisper. I'm whispering, but you can understand me, right? You can understand me. And then you have to kind of visually and with hands and other gestures show a little bit more to pull the person into the dialogue. What you can't do with action figures. So it isn't that they're talking in a room staring at a camera. It's their plastic action figures and they can't physically emote too much. I think most of it works. So let's go and shoot it. On Chinese New Year. Year of the Snake. Note that Jennifer Slayton is gone from the story. And we're going to explain, and all the other ones, and we're going to explain why. Very simply, by showing that she's on the bridge, and she's one of the characters in this scene. On Viceland's ship. And when Viceland's ship goes boom, she goes boom with it. Anyway, so yeah, let's go. Let's do this. So slight behind the scenes, you have our heroes here. Going to talk to her on the view screen, and they're allegedly on their ship, but they're not. They're on this expansive bridge set. De Vries isn't supposed to be Wunsch, but Wunsch isn't supposed to be here, so it's De Vries. She's gone over to the other ship. We never see her again in the book, so it's De Vries. It's fine. Do it. What doesn't make sense is things move when they're in space, and the ship is hovering over a Dotal base. Why would it be? I think they would be gone from out of range. So a slight revision of line of dialogue here should be that something to the effect of that their synchronous orbit has brought them back to the base and they're over it. Because otherwise, that doesn't really, why would they be doing that? Yeah.
Okay, note that there's a few slight revisions revolving the shuttle. They're not on the shuttle. They're already on their ship, escape ship, getting it up in orbit, and they're watching the fireworks. So that makes more sense. Okay, go. Note in making of that we have changed the name of the ship, which was called the Vengeance, because it's not about vengeance, it's about power. And also, we'd never be able to prove that Star Trek 2012 was not out first, because publishing-wise it was, but that this story apparently didn't catch the silly name for the ship. But the original draft that this is based on is from before 2000. But yeah, we'd never be able to prove that because the books came out in 2019, 2020, way after. So we wouldn't be able to prove that. So the ship will be changed. Yeah. According to the script, the Hadrian is attacked as well, and it blows up. Like, damn. But we're not going to do that. Or we're going to change this a little bit so that, well, they kind of get rescued by the New York. Well, we're just going to leave the Hadrian's fate ambiguous and have the New York rescue them. So you can put them on the New York. Because otherwise it would be the ship from the news ship, and that's stupid. It's really dumb. So no, it's the New York rescue. Yeah. So the other ship that looks like the California shows up rescue. I rewrote the last page a little bit because it's kind of the same information being espoused to Cassins over the comm, and that's boring. So instead of that, he goes back to the commander guy, tells him that he's already here. He has heard it. He's right there. So yeah. So then that scene is over, and we have completed the middle act of this movie. The middle act is done. Holy shit. Well, we cut out about 3 or 4 pages of it altogether, just because those pages didn't work. But yeah, we finished the middle act, so here we are. And yeah, so instead of being 50 pages, it was like 43 or 44. But yeah, same 44. So yeah, is there anything? I don't think there's anything more to do on this. It's all there. It's mothership incident. That's what it was. It was all meant as part of a series. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that concludes today's filming of Full Day Shoot. In brief, yeah. So we've got that together. It turns out that the ship wasn't the Vengeance at all. It had been wrong in the script. It was the Victory. Now the Victory goes back to the Adamson and the Davies as well, from what this was before Space the Fun Frontier Planetcom. It was Space Lego. And in Space Lego, there was Victory, the Adamson, and the Davies. The Victory was one of the ships. Also, Victory was the title of a silly war game, Build Your Own Adventure. And so was Battlefield California. They both were. And they are both referenced in there. And they predate that other California battle story and that other communist one from the 80s by a good 3 or 4 years. But you wouldn't know that. So, California with a K, no, it wasn't that. Although it's so similar. Yeah. Also, young adult dystopian stories became popular in the early 2000s. But I don't think that's what this was. I think that it was just earlier. Also, what they're building up to is clearly not that, not related to that, but more like a millennium is approaching. Because it was done, all these stories were done before the millennium. So, yeah, anyway, so that's today's filming. Yeah. It is the 30th of January, and we're on the next act of this Cohnirri space story. There's about 80 pages in there for this act. It clearly is a little long. And the Catman story and the story and they all get together and that last part of this book is really long. We want to make sure though that it's all there. But I was looking over we're going to go into the next scene, the next segment, and there's some characters that are introduced in the end of this story, not third act villains, but this is the third act. But the final act. But they are third act heroes that don't need to be there. and also some of the other stuff has been changed. The Starship Mozart from the end of the last story appears here. Now, and the way the story goes so far, and we're going to get into it, is that it took them, it's been about a month, a little over a month, let's say, they got to the cat planet. Right, our heroes, Tom Cassins and crew, got to the cat planet. And they've been there now for another month. So it's another month in the story. And that is consistent with how the story goes. It's been another month. So they've had 2 months to rebuild the fleet. There is no way that in the story-wise and logic-wise, that they could rebuild a fleet in 2 months. That's not going to happen. So they are not on the pole star Alan Slayton in this story, even though in the novel it says they somehow rebuilt the pole star using the bridge modules and made another pole ship, basically. They couldn't possibly have done that. And the Alan's, that's not Michael Slayton, the Alan Slayton, nor would they be able to pull that off. So it's probably more like it's probably more like the like any government bureaucracy doing something. I was going to quote the Simon Whistler in the tram train thing, but that doesn't make any sense. So yeah, it's not like that. They did build something, but they've done it cheap. And that makes the space war thing later on less Star Trek and Star Wars. It wouldn't be Star Wars at all. It wouldn't be like Death Stars going at it. It wouldn't be that Death Star. It wouldn't be battleships going at it in space. It would be more like a route for the later stuff. How would they even compare? Well, they do have the other ships they could have built, but yeah, there is a dilemma in the story. It's a plot hole because they can't really have done these things. Not even Starfleet in the Heralds of Star Trek during the Dominion War could have done these things in 2 months. So yeah, they don't have a fleet. Probably what happens is Purra arrives at Earth, discovers the Earth fleet is not a threat to them. What stops Purra and his bad guys in the story is they try to land on the Earth, and the Earth is heavily fortified, which makes more sense than having a space fleet space battle. There is a space battle, but it would be over within minutes, and it wouldn't carry on for another 100 pages after this. That's 80 pages we're going to shoot. It wouldn't really. They would. But space is vast, so you figure, well, okay, space is vast. Maybe some of these ships run and hide. They're going to chase them. Maybe that's what happens. We're introduced to some new characters in the last minute, in this last 80 minutes of story, but it's like more like 50 minutes or less. And we don't need to be introduced to new characters. It's confusing. I don't mind Dawson showing up because he looks a little bit like Cassins. And I don't mind Mays coming back, who looks like Cisco because he's a Cisco figure, and he's still in his uniform. Just an anchor at Deep Space Nine a little bit, homage, because we don't have another figure for that, so it's just him. He's named after Mays from the church, who was a white guy, but it's Cisco. It's a Cisco-like guy. It's a black guy, and that's fine. They race swap. That's fine. That's fine. We're very woke over here, so it's all good. So yeah, it's not a pole star. What they've done is they've readied the Discovery, and the Discovery is out there, ready to go. So that's what's going on, is they're ready to Discovery. But we don't see them in this opening scene on the ship, at least on the bridge. They're in some kind of a meeting room, and the first 11 pages are them in the meeting room, meeting about what happened when the Mozart returned. The Mozart was captured by the Darkrai, by the evil Harl Glynn, that lord guy, who was a duke, not a lord. It's a duke. He wanted to be higher rank, but he's only a duke. And yeah, he doesn't control a planet. He just has a ship called the Covert Ulgal, the Harbinger. We hear about that from the other guy, from Hendrix, who was originally supposed to be someone else, but we decided it's the Martian guy, Hendrix. And we know where the Martian girl is. We know where Jacqueline or Stevens is. We know where Jacqueline is. She's on the planet. She's on Cat Planet. She's one of Antonio's friends. It's a May-December thing, and probably the only reason they're friends is is she's more interesting than Char was, and probably a healthier relationship. But we don't actually see that relationship much. A little bit. Yeah, the character development actually works in this story. And yeah, this is not comparable to anything current at all, because as I said before with the reviews, to remind you, all 7 of the original Cohnirri Space season books were completed by 2000. So they're from the 90s to 2000. And then they were rewritten in 2015 and 2016 to go on Amazon KDP, but they weren't rewritten for content and story to update them. They were just rewritten to polish them up and prepare them for going out published. They were published. So they're not, they're not relating to anything current. It's 25, 30 years ago that these stories are emulating. And no, they're not technically Star Trek parodies. It's just that putting the Star Trek parody name, Starship locations, on there makes them more visible. Otherwise, no one would even know they're there. And they're kind of, in the sense, a parody. They kind of are. You can think of them as a continuation of Deep Space Nine and the Legacy series, a little bit later than the Legacy series, continuing on the Starship locations legacy. 70 years after the story with Amanda. Yeah, as a cute. I'm to think of it as that 70 years after that, in their timeline, and that's kind of explained in the final story. There may be, we're not saying there may be 7 of these, but only because this 7 would cover just book 1, which did 4 of them. Was going to do 4 of them, and book 2, which would do an additional 3 of them, because book 2 is not as long. And also because we don't want the last 100 pages of book 2 at all, because that's the Totemus, and we can't use them. So we're not using them anymore. We're just going to reference them, but not use them. I rewrote the ending of that a little while ago, so that they're not there anymore. They're just gone. They keep the threat of the Totemus, like, oh, the threat, our evil masters are going to come back and get you, kind of threat. Whereas, yeah, they're just saying that. They know they're gone. That isn't like the Q made them go away. It's the Q made them go away a really long time ago. And they're just saying this as a threat. Ha ha ha. You have to listen to us because we have this evil force that's going to get you. And it's like, no, they're gone. They've gone a long time ago. And that leads into Space Vanguards, where they go to look for a Totemus planet, the Red Angel planet. And they find out that this one base is gone. Except they have a super device there. Not a weapon, a super device, which captures them. It's like a cage. That's the sphere of influence from that story. But that's different. Yeah. Which Mark Cards does a Wrath of Khan type story, whereas Khan isn't that bad, so he has to team together with Clark to. So he's not Khan, he's just an adversary. Yeah, that's a different story. We're not there yet. This one, let's do this one before I ramble on too much and burn up all the footage. But I wanted to explain that I have eliminated some characters and put in some characters which you won't know about when you see the story. The Fletcher character, who's important in the other books that we're not going to do. So why is he there, the other ship? It's easiest to just say, okay, it's not the Alan Slayton. It might be the New York, and it might be this Discovery. The Discovery is introduced, Beth Cassin's ship. So introduced the Discovery. It's kind of the same kind of ship. So, it's the same kind of ship as the Endeavor. It's ready to go. So yeah, I think it'd be a little more in there, and that actually makes it work if you do that. The trouble is, of course, that we don't have a lot of aliens, and we don't have a lot of heroes, and we've used up a lot of the aliens, and you know from seeing the other 2 movies that they're repurposing the same guys over and over again. The Meshax is basically coming back as the bad guy, the other guy. It's the same action figure, just playing somebody else. And other people have come back as different action figures. Vunch has killed off screen, apparently. Yeah, that type of thing. But we have included DeVries. We brought her back for this one to be on the Sanprakak ship. Yeah, and if Sanprakak
gives all of his giant technology stuff to the humans. Then he has no ship, so how does he get to the cat planet to come rescue Cassins? Yeah, how does he do that? It's probably...
Okay, this is a scene in here which has... they get rescued. They're going to rescue the ship. But the characters in it were changed. Well, at least you said, okay, it's not Fletcher, it's Beth. He opens the channel to the ship and then nothing happens. And I think that scene might have been deleted. And then, yeah, the ship gets rescued. So making of note, it's making of. The timeline here is funky, but the bad guy is stealing supplies, so maybe he, even though he blew up part of the base, he still let off fireworks in the base. Maybe he, back home, we're back on Sagrum, maybe there's just enough supplies left for him to survive a little longer. Yeah, there needs to be at least a dozen days in there for them to even get where they're going, so, yeah. No. So yeah, I just fudge it. Yeah. So slight revisions. We have Hermes is going to be this other dude. Yeah. Make sure to have him have a Baltimore voice and not sound like Worf, even though he is a Worf action figure. So let's do this. There's a little bit of some wonkiness here in that Max Chi and Max Jenkins are kind of the same, are different guys, but they're Max. So different Maxes appear, and that's confusing. Then we have a guy named Hermes, who in this version is going to be Jason, the Klingon guy, and that makes sense. But the other Max that's supposed to be Jenkins should be him too, because the other one is gone. The other one has gone to join Antonio. So Chi from Benton's ship has gone to join Antonio in this story. And it's been weeks since the Benton story, implying so it's possible. So that's what we're going to do, because there are too many Maxes, and there's a Hermes who's barely in it. So we're just going to give it to him, because why introduce a bunch of brand new characters completely out of the blue, only to have them just walk off set later and be gone. So this is second unit, and there's no way to show this combat scene. So we'll do it like we did with Transformers, and yeah. So so here's let's go. So he doesn't sound like Worf. Remember, he's a Worf action figure, but he won't sound like Worf. Right. I think it's still good. We have 42 minutes of tape, and we have that in the background, but I think it's quiet enough that just this part where they're on the planet and preparing to leave, and then leave the planet, and then they're all on the ships for the rest of the story, the last 40 pages or so. Yeah, so they're not on the planet for much longer. So let's just do that and get it done, and then we can say it's done. Okay. Page 144 in the middle, and they go on to the fleet. That really should be a new chapter, because they're up in space now. And then the rest of it, they're in space. And there's only one brief scene back on the planet when they are, when Char and the others are leaving. So, yeah. We're not going to film that yet. We're not doing that yet. We have 28 minutes on the thing, and that's not a lot. We're not doing that yet. Yeah. So, yeah. So, brief making of mention, that was the end of scene 12. And, yeah, it was set in a meeting room for some reason for like a page and a half. And we set it on the bridge instead because it's just a page and a half. It's 2 minutes. We're going to go on to the next scene, and it's going to be on the planet, or on one of the ships near that planet. Yeah. Okay, so we just wrapped Principal Photography in part 3 of book 1. Part 3 of book 1. There's 4 parts in book 1, but we're not doing the 4th one, or the 5th one in book 2, or the 6th, or the 7th, at this time. Let's just put this together and see what it looks like. Because this is part 3. It's a trilogy. It's a good trilogy. Do we want to continue with the space war idea, and also have the whole
the Letamok fight, and then the Darkrai fight immediately after that. Do we want all of that? Do we actually want to do that and make it more like a Deep Space Nine ending? Maybe not. Yeah, because really story-wise, you kind of can't do that. You have action figures on the planet, and we've done the Space War with Transformer thing before with the other guys, and we've done some of the Star Trek ones as a Space War. Those are very hard to pull off. The Space Wars. We managed to fudge it a bunch of times, but yeah, we don't have. We can just show models flipping around in space and then put in fireworks, and there you have your Space War. But it is more difficult and not as interesting to just show a space battle going on, like so yeah, so we'll do that anyway. So the and all the other synergy of the other stories come into place, and now you know why. And now you're gonna watch this story and know why we had the guy who played Kirk got on the set earlier in December, and as a consultant, and why the other stories happened the way they do, and all that, because apparently he's Nagaya Pura in the story. That's cool. Yeah, he's Nagaya Pura, so or at least the guy that sounds a lot like him is Nagaya Pura. He's a painted up green Orion bug version of Kirk. And it's so yeah, there's this weird the backstory thinking up at the time was like it was kind of funny if he was like he was the love child of Kirk and Martia from that episode of Star Trek with the Green Orion girl. And he was like, oh, okay, that's why he looks like Shatner. But he'd be hundreds of years old, so it can't be. It's a joke. Maybe he's cloned by them or something. Yeah, the aliens cloned him to make him superior alien group. Even though the Orions wouldn't like that idea. There's a little bit of that silly inferior superior complex alien thing going on in there. A little bit of feminist thing going on there. But the Dotal are sort of the surrogate for the Tatimus that came later, that were going to come later, but now aren't, because the Orville kind of did that with the Moklins, and we don't want to do that. So yeah, just another Space War thing. Yeah, the Space War stuff is kind of goofy, and the other stories or shows have already done it. We're not sure what we're going to do with that. Maybe we'll just take out all the battle stuff from those 4 remaining other stories that we have scripts for, and just have it be some space adventures where they occasionally fight. You could do that. You could go through it and make it a trilogy where they don't really fight that much, because really the shtick of the space battle with Pura story that you're seeing here. Well, this is making of, so you've already seen it. You want to watch the making of afterward. This is we like to do extras, and there weren't very many extras on this one, so have a lot about it. But yeah, so you have the Space War thing and that kind of thing. You kind of have the problem that the Section 31 movie did, and a bunch of these other Star Trek, Discovery era, JJ Trek movies. There's always some kind of weird space blood, or there's a MacGuffin that's going to blow up, or there's a con-like bad guy that's got a MacGuffin that's going to blow up. And Mark's Cards had seen my review of Section 31 and the Red Letter Media one, and thought, yeah, that was a really good idea. Your funny bluff thing at the end, where the super weapon really wasn't a super weapon. It was a joke. The bad guy was bluffing, and that's why it didn't destroy anything, because it didn't. So yeah, I got to the end of this story, and I'm thinking like the last 6 minutes of it or so, and thinking I don't like the ending of this original story. I know that I grabbed some pieces from the other stories, and they have a fight scene. There was like a battle fight scene. I thought a battle of wits is more interesting. So what would happen if Pura, the Kirk-like alien who understands bluffing, he is a Kirk basically. He gets bluffed by Cohnirri, who's a Data figure. He gets it's in the script that he can't attack his own people, and that he has since removed devices that were on the other ones controlling them to make them turn. And you think that he's gonna be mad at one of them for saying, "Oh, she killed a bunch of her own people on the planet," because that's their rule. They can't kill their own people. But then he says, "Oh well, I took the devices out of you guys, so yeah, I forgive you guys because you were under control of the alien." But the bluff works. So he goes like, I have this super device I'm going to use on you guys. Haha. Actually, he does the Mark's Cards and I were discussing this last night. That should be the ending of this story, because it's funny. Because like he's like, I have this total MacGuffin super weapon that I was going to use on you guys, and then I decided no. That's stupid. There's no such thing as a planet-destroying super weapon. That's dumb. I was just kidding. But I'm going to do this other trick that I've got. The escape char maneuver thing. Complete. Also, there was a scene where there was a guy on a ship at the end where they're, how did Char get away from Antonio? And then Antonio got away from Char on a ship separate. And then there was some dialogue that was cut out at the end of the script. And it's missing. So it just had them be on the bridge of the enemy ship, which makes sense. Okay, they captured Antonio as well. And Char as well, out of space. And Char was already there. They captured them all, and they said, like, okay, Antonio, we're gonna send you off. You don't need to be on our ship anymore. Bye. They sent him away. And then they activate their device that they're gonna do, and in the Star Trek type of ending, you have the bad guys getting away, but you set up the idea that, okay, well, the Alan Slayton project that they were building is not a bunch of super pole ship, mighty ship things they're gonna fight. No, that look like dicks. Giant pole ship things that are going through space. It's that the fleet was kind of taking the Simon Whistler and the train story that I mentioned earlier. There's this guy on the internet, Simon Whistler. He was going on about the British train system. Their bullet train system is crap, and they're never going to build it because they spent too much money on it, basically. So they're never going to build a high-speed rail there because the countryside people don't want it, and the other people don't want it. So maybe the idea of this Alan Slayton project is that they can't actually finish this fleet thing on time, and because they moved up some of the timeline, but didn't move up the story. The originally movie 3 took place over like 5 months or 6 months or something, but and it was like a middle part, the middle third of the novel. And it doesn't make sense like that it jumps that quickly and that far. But if it is 6 months, and it's a month to get there and a month to get back and months to send them over there, and it's roughly 5 or 6 months at the end, and it kind of is in this story, they couldn't possibly have built a space fleet in that short amount of time. So they have Cohnirri rig the two ships up together with the Discovery pulling it, and go to stop or at least bluff the bad guy, basically. And then the bad guy counters the bluff by having his own bluff that he uses to escape by saying, heading for the corridor. He's got a big ship. You'd think that they could see that. But yeah, so the ending now works better. It's a satisfying ending if you ended it with a trilogy. Wanted to have it end with a trilogy and say like, okay, they're not. Yeah, the next level threat escalation of the story may not be. It's kind of like said like, oh, it might not be later on. Maybe they'll do something with that. It might not be an escalation threat. A bit like how the Tatamus story in book 7, which is actually book 2 in the middle somewhere, how that ends. Book 2 is long too, and book 2 would have had Cohnirri Space. We're going to do Cohnirri Space books 1 and book 2. And book 1 was 4 like feature-length movies in book 1, and the last part of book 1 was this space war. They go to Earth and they find out the humans are. They try to land on Earth and the humans beat them because they land on Earth. And then space war. If we do that, and then they have the book 2, which has only 3. Well, no, it has 4 as well. It has. It has. No, wait. So there's 4 here, and there's 3 over there. Or there's 4. There's 4 over there. So book 2 has as many chapters as book 1. As many. There's another 4 movies in there. There's 5 movies in there. It's even longer. And so the 5th one was taken off. It was the Tatamus one. We didn't want to do. We're not doing the Tatamus one. We're not going any further with the series. So we're like, okay, it gets up to book 7, basically. Yeah, or movie 7, book 2, near the end of book 2. So near the end of book 2. There's 100 pages of book 2 left that we didn't want to do. it's like 600 pages or 500 pages, so 400 pages of 500 basically. That's kind of what it is. And so yeah, this one was a little long, so we have this one being a little long on its own, and and that's fine. But I think altogether, when you put all this together, it's not going to be long. It's going to be like under 2 hours when you put it all together. You have it all works out. The aliens do what they're doing, but Per being more of a natural Dotal bad guy, he's more he's more regimented in his beliefs. So his group is an endangered species. So he doesn't want to blow up the ship. So his motivation for going to other planets is probably to colonize them, not necessarily to take them over, which is an interesting idea. It's not something that you usually see in a sci-fi story, where his motivation is not revenge and I'm out to do something. It's more like, I'm curious about this other colony planet and I want it. I'm going to go there and try to kick it because my brood needs to reproduce or something, or whatever. So the colony planet. Yeah, so we have that set up there. I think it works. I like all my stuff, but of course I do. The Cohnirri, the Transformers, the Star Trek story. I was watching I didn't so much watch Planet of the Fallen Ones again, the second season, just because, well, I know about those blogs and where they go and the direction of that story. But I watched the other ones, the first season of Starship Locations and the first season and then the other two, the Destinations and the other one, in preparation for doing the Cohnirri space. And it was like, the stuff that's been done, you don't need to, and I liked it. It was all good. There was no episodes where I said, oh, God, I never want to see that episode again. No, there was nothing like that. They were all good. They're all good. So this MacGuffin at the end of this story is tacked on from Mark's Card's suggestion. And it kind of works. It could solve the story arc. It could say, okay, well, yeah, these bad guys don't operate like Char and Holt would operate. They operate more like, oh, we just want to colonize things and take them over and stuff. Or colonial bad guys. Yeah, we're not really out to conquer you. We're out to which is kind of being conquered, but yeah, we're out to just put our colony there. So it won't work if they go to Earth. We know how that ends. But yeah, we don't really want a space war. We don't want it to turn into War of the Worlds Season 2, where they ran out of ideas. We don't want it to turn into Deep Space Nine Season 7, where at the end they ran out of money. And they were like, oh, no, do this now. But there are 4 more scripts that were completed from this end of book 1, the 100 pages, the end of book 1 with the war. And then the beginning of the war, the whole Darkrai War. Basically, the other three 90-minute scripts are the Darkrai War, basically. The other aliens, and that alien we introduced at the end of book 2 is in that one. So yeah. So if we did manage that, we'd have to go back to that guy. And yes, the last act villain is in this too. Per. But you knew Per was coming, so he's technically not a last act villain, as well as that other guy. You knew the other guy was coming, Harlequin. And Harlequin, it wasn't about Harlequin in his scene in the last movie. It was about Guy Nat and his fate. It wasn't necessary. And it was about getting the Mozart back where it was going. And then the Mozart ship shows up in this one. So all of the loose ends are tied up except for Char's on the enemy ship. Apparently he's gone with the enemy. He doesn't have to go to Aruga, though. They could just kill him. Or something. He doesn't have to menace Cassins in book 2. He doesn't have to do that. Because it's not necessarily Star Trek, and it's not necessarily the whole revenge villain thing. It's not that either. It's its own thing. It's its own thing, and I think it comes of age in book 3 here, and you have the characters. The book 3 is an episode about Orange Claw with Cassins in it. We get Cassins and his crew. And the character development of them in the script and the story is very well done. And the I say so myself. But yeah, you get to know them just based on what they're acting and doing in the story. And Cassins and Slayton, yeah, the Cassins and Slayton, totally in the future, if somebody like at a convention or something says, totally, I ship Cassins and Slayton, I'd be all, well, so do I. Those two would probably get together. Oh my. But yes. Yes, I've been to many of those conventions and sci-fi shows, including people asking weird questions of actors and stuff. Like in their mind, they have shipped the relationship to the characters and the actors. Like, okay, that's you, that's not me. I didn't do that. Yeah, I'm not in your head. It's fun, but it's fun that Will Wheaton was like, I ship other guys. Yeah, in his interview, yeah, he talked a lot about shipping. It's kind of funny. That guy's funny. Yeah, we don't need to go about that, but yeah, I would ship my own stuff. Of course, Starship Locations is shipping. Technically, it's relation shipping. It's that there's two words for that. There's shipping and there's they used to call it KS and PL and all that. But yeah, it's Star Trek shipping. You're taking Star Trek action figures and having them play different guys so they can get and have a relationship, basically. And yeah, I like that ending. A very Star Trek ending to that story. I just like that. They made that work. They actually made that work. Okay. Yeah. Would his attack fleet even bother with Earth? Maybe he wouldn't. Maybe he shows up and he's like, oh, there's no one to attack here. There's a ship over there, and another one over there, and another one over there. Yeah. So I could totally rewrite those 4 stories and take out all of the space battle footage. Just say 1/4 final story, and then they meet the hero guys at the end. I could totally rewrite those. I could just take out all that, and I wouldn't take out the Saquon stuff and the other stuff from part 2. That stuff is interesting. Take out the space battles because we can't film them, and would that in fact take out the other stuff? It might take out some of it. They're going about doing the Star Trek thing. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Also, the problem is that you have about 47 Star Trek figures. 47. There's that number, and from Star Trek, and you're using 20 or so of them. 21 of them as aliens, and then the other ones are just variants. And you have to like almost use the same variants again, like the Cisco guy showing up. And maybe that's actually an in-joke thing. Maybe the Cisco guy as Maze is actually Cisco, and he's a prophet. And he's like watching over him and stuff. They don't say that in the story, but maybe. But yeah, I'll have to look over those 4 remaining scripts that are written, and see whether they could be changed, rewritten, whatever, or just like whole pages of them. Just we're not doing that. We're not. I like this part, but I don't like that part. Just take pieces that work, because it's all kind of similar in its story wise. At least this one had the escape again, but had it make sense. It's a similar idea. They raid a base again. And guess what they would do in the next one? They would raise a base again. I seem to be doing that a lot. I really liked the raid, I guess, or something. And all of these stories were written before the original stories these were based on were written when I was in high school and then college, and then later college. And they were all done before 2000. The 7th book of the novel series. You can go read the novel series, and if you read the novel series, you would see these 3 movies in this trilogy as the first, roughly 3/4 of the first novel as a movie. There's the first 3/4 of the movie of the novel right there as this thing. It's slightly different at the end, slightly better at the end, because visually, when it's a movie version, you kind of have to change some things around and say like, okay, this doesn't make sense. That makes sense better. My dialogue makes a little sense better than it's the other way. And yeah, there weren't a lot of heroes on the planet. That I think it's kind of funny that the book kind of addresses the whole Star Trek Planet Hell conundrum when you're down on a planet, and there aren't a lot of actors and a lot of stand-ins. So you're basically you're stuck with we go down to the planet and meet the planetary leader or something, and it's like Picard meeting the leader. Even though why would he meet the planet's leader? That doesn't make any sense. Or why would he be even an impact on the planet? He's going down to a planet where you assume there's 1 billion people there or more, maybe 7 billion people there. Why would they even know he was there? I liked how in Strange New Worlds when I went to Canada in one episode, they had a time travel episode in Canada. The con part was stupid, but they did the Canada thing, and it's like, okay, they wouldn't be noticed really. But yeah, so the other was a scene, whatever the time agent thing. It's kind of goofy. Kirk and Lion Khan. Then Lion Khan is supposed to be the version of another version of Khan, but as a girl. That's what he's supposed to be. It's supposed to be Khan. That's what he's supposed to be. But it's a lady in this one. So it's a completely different universe. Strange New Worlds is a different universe. It's not our universe. It's not even Abrams' verse. It's the other Abrams verse. It's the other guy. Yeah, not Metalis, but the other dude. There's a third dude who stepped in and took over. But Discovery was Michelle Paradise. So, yeah, she took over in the 32nd century stuff. So, anyway, so that's how, I'm not going to ramble about Star Trek, although this kind of is a Star Trek movie thing, and yeah, I already changed the ending. So, yeah, so this is book 3, movie 3, and that's movie 3, book 1. Could go on to Star Crackers, but we'll see. Probably gonna do one more of these. That's probably what I'm gonna do. Is I'm gonna go back through those 4 scripts, and I'm gonna say what parts of these are cool that I want to keep, and let's just not do the other ones. Because the Space War is just problematic. It's like why would they? This is Calicat the Calicaster, and this is the making of Cohnirri Space Book 3. Movie 3. And here on the end of movie 3, and it's and we did a first pass of each of the acts. There's 5 acts, and you put them all together. They're about we're going to put them together soon, probably tomorrow, and they put them all together. You're going to have a 90-minute to 2-hour movie, probably 2 hours. If there's 5 20-minute ones, 2 hours. I looked over these other 4 that I printed out as scripts over last weekend. These are the one that is the remaining the 190-minute roughly story that is the remainder of book 1, which has the space war, the space battle thing. And the other 3 that are basically the first half of book 2, pretty much. First half of book 2. Well, a little over the first half of book 2. Like maybe 300 pages into book 2, something like that. So they're each roughly. Well, this last one is about the same length as the double one that we just did. So you have the whole thing. So you've got. Movie 7 is a really thick bastard. So you got movie 6, movie 5. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long they are. I'm just looking at it. It doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter. My recommendation on these, because book 2 goes off on a tangent, goes off its own universe. It's set 10 years later and does something else, and everyone's older, and there's like this thing is recommendation right off the bat is don't go beyond book 1, which goes back to the other stories that don't go beyond book 1. There's just at this point, if you want to, I don't know how you would even go about. I mean, I'll look it over again and I'll see if there's any little bits in there, like to go to the Cohnirri planet or something, and they do. But the main problem with the book 2 is that book 2 is predicated on them going from fighting the Darkrai aliens about halfway through to going fighting the Totemus aliens. And of course, we can't use the Totemus. We can't use them. They're the misogynistic alien bad guys, and they're too much like characters from another TV show that we won't mention. The Orville. We've kind of mentioned it. They're too similar to that. They're also too similar to other characters. And doing them would just be difficult, if not problematic or impossible. I circled all the occurrences of these Totemus characters. I went through the various other aliens that they are. So when I wrote the 7 books, when we put the 7 books together in the 2000s, before the 2000s, and then the rewrites in the 2015 period, we deliberately didn't include stuff like the internet and texting and all that stuff, because why would they have the internet in space? They wouldn't. They have subspace radio, that kind of thing. So all that shortcut stuff that they have now, they put it in modern science fiction. We don't have that in Cohnirri space. So that kind of stuff. We have hyper radio, so they can talk to each other over planets, even though that kind of doesn't make sense. They didn't appear to have transporters as well, either. And there's a scene in movie 3 where they appear to use a transporter. Well, this is a Star Trek spoof, so maybe they developed one. Turns out, the alien lady wasn't using one. She used a magic trick. Flashing light magic trick thing. And then disappeared to the floor, to the wall. So, yeah. So it wasn't actually a transporter. So they still could say that they may not have those on that planet. Maybe not. Because the transporter is kind of a cheat. You can go wherever you want. And doing a cursory analysis of this story, I introduce the Darkrai and go on about the Darkrai, and they're basically space kamikazes that blow up their planet about halfway through the book, in book 2, and that's a little offensive, a little toward. So what I did was, when book 2 got a lot of extensive rewrites to make it look like book 2, and then to make it look good for publishing. But books 3 through 7 in the were just episodes that were cycled around and released from the series, 65 episodes. And they're more like compilations. They're not really they're okay. They're fine for what they are. They're fine. Book 2 is fine for what it is. You read it and go to book 2. That's fine, and it's going to stay that way as the books if you want to read them. But adapting them is very difficult after book 1, because they go off on a tangent and 2 or 3 other tangents about other things. And so in book 2, what we wanted to do is we were introducing these other guys, and we're like, oh, we're gonna do that, and this is not movie 3. This is all of the movies I've done so far, including this 3rd one, are all book 1. You kind of want to stop at book 1. That's fine. Book 1. You could create a 4th story to wrap it up. I would advise that, using mostly elements from the remainder of book 1, and don't have it end with yet another San Prakak discusses with President Abernathy the origin of the Cohnirri. You've already done that. Did that in book 2. In movie 2, you don't need to do it in movie 3. We know. She already knows. She told her. You don't need to do that twice. That was one of the things that got cut out. And for some reason, concerned about cultural appropriation, I decided in the book 2 version that was written as a storybook. So the 2015 rewrites, basically. So after the show, they weren't in the original. I included a bunch of characters who appeared to be Asian or Japanese, because there weren't a lot of them in there, so that they could have counterpoint to these alien kamikaze guys and say, oh, no, we don't do that anymore. That alien race over there, that's doing that. We don't do that. So they have this weird idea, like I've got to apologize to people ahead of time that an alien race that aren't them behaves that way. I don't know what I was doing. That I didn't need to do that. So there's these long speeches between these aliens and people discussing the nature of why this one guy who rules the planet wants to blow his planet up rather than be captured by the bad guy Earth forces. There's a bad guy Earth force. There's an evil admiral in it. An evil general admiral guy does this thing. He's gonna blow up. Freaks the alien out who's suicidal already. So he goes kabloom and he deletes the planet and himself with it. Actually, he kind of escapes at the end. Which, no, don't do that. Also, Char reappears on another planet that they go to, and his menaces Cassins in a sort of a rewrite of the scene that was supposed to be Slayton Jr. doing the same thing. And that comes up later in book 4 and 5 when a similar incident happens to Slayton's son. And then there's the one with Derek Cassins, Tom's son, and he encounters a similar thing. And it's like they keep doing the same stuff over and over again. The trilogy that we just made, although it is a little bit derivative of itself and a little bit of Star Trek, it's not so much you couldn't just enjoy it on its own. The 3 books go together, the 3 stories go together. As for the cultural appropriation, I don't know what I was doing, and we're not going to do that. So if we went back to this Sequan planet, the knitting lady, Sequan is to knit. That doesn't make any sense. The knitting lady. If we go back to that and how that came about, that was just like, yeah, that was just add some stuff in there to make it more culturally appropriate and stuff, and add more characters that are all white. And it's like, it didn't work because it just seems like a white guy writing about an Asian guy. It does not work. The Wong character is fine because all he does is flies a ship, talks to them, does some things, and then he's gone. And the cat guy, originally called Yun Sol, is now called Orange Claw. Again, appropriation. Did not know that there was a group called the Yun Sol. And I was like, oh shit, I can't use that. So I had to change that. Because the short story serials that inspired this, and Star Wars and other things like that, Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, that type of thing, G.I. Joe, and others, Defenders of the Earth and all that, Marvel and DC would throw in these Cold War type characters with Chinese names and Oriental names. Star Trek did it too, and the Klingons, the early Klingons were. Anyway, that's another. But they would do that, and so I did it in my story. I figured, well, they did. I'm gonna do it in my story. And now they're green in this story, but still, no. No, let's not do that. Now in the Vanguards, it makes more sense because they're culturally appropriated everything, and they're like the groups are all mixed up. And that was partly because we were trying to. We were 2 guys, 3 guys filming. Well, 4 initially filming the movie, and one of them filming and us acting in it, and we wanted to include everything, but we had beards, so some of us had beards, some of us didn't. We're supposed to be playing the lady because we couldn't get any women to be in our story, so we had a beard and put a veil over the beard. It didn't mean Muslim or anything. It was just that I was trying to hide the beard. That's all. I don't know what I was doing. But anyway, so over here, this other one, we don't need to do that. We don't need to. Yeah, and also the weird promotions, even in 10 years of the characters, is like something out of J.J. Abrams' story, even though it's before J.J. Abrams. It's before Star Trek. Well, it's a 2015 rewrite though, so yeah, I would have known about both J.J. Abrams movies at that point, and the third one was on its way, so I would have known. So I probably accidentally infused that in there. Oh, Thomas Cassins is an admiral in 10 years because all of the other Space Forces guys die. The Darkrai defeat them because the Dutch and then McCurr blow themselves up, and it's like because they're the good guy ones. They're supposed to be the good guys, but they're bad guys apparently. They control to delete themselves like the bad guy does. Yeah. But that makes no sense. Yeah, the mad crazy admirals doesn't really work in that particular context of that story. I think you could probably come up with a sort of a rewrite of the final act, as a movie, rewrite the final act, and use that. But those other three, I wouldn't bother. Don't go into book 2. Just there's so many issues with what that is, and where that's going. Yeah, I know they do get to the Kalat planet, but when they do, they're on their way to this other thing. So they have this setup where the Darkrai are the setup for the story, the main baddies in book 1. But apparently, I didn't think that was good enough. The main baddies, the bad guys. So I wanted to introduce these other bad guys, the Totemus, into the Darkrai and then the Totemus. And unfortunately, they go over their plan to go to the Totemus planet so much that the Darkrai is just kind of tossed aside. In fact, characters in the story, in the dialogue, mention, oh, the Darkrai aren't that important that you just fought them and nearly destroyed your entire Space Force. No, you have to go and train to go fight these Totemus guys. And then one of the other Totemus guys kills the Discovery and Beth Cassins, and after, and one of them kills San Prakak and the crew later on too. And it's like in the story, and it's like, what was I doing? And then like they go, it gets really batshit. It gets weird, and it's like it's not as bad as Dune. It's not like the sandworms that God or anything, but it's weird. And I tacked on this ending last weekend, saying like, oh, the Q guy shows up and he says, or one of the Star Trek people show up and they say, oh, by the way, the Totemus thing is all a ruse. The aliens are tricking you, and don't worry about it. Like, no, that's not going to work. Come on, that doesn't work because, yeah, even though they've been going on for, like, they mentioned the Totemus hundreds of times in all the story, all together 100 times throughout the story, and then lead to it, and then don't show it. You need to cut them out. Just don't show them at all. So it's kind of funny. Look at this behind the scenes thing and go like, oh, you got that entire story arc out. Well, if it's that messy and it's in the DNA of the whole thing, you probably can't use any of book 2. Just don't use book 2 at all if you're going to use just some of it. And it was going through here, and I'm like, well, we can't use the sequence stuff. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit anywhere. We can't use Dutch and Marker being evil because that's just culturally appropriating and weird, and just okay, Dutch and Marker, and he's evil, and then the ship dies, and then in this second one the Discovery dies, the Kaleen and the Discovery. And when they go back to the Kentaurus planet, Alpha Centauri type planet. It was originally supposed to be Alpha Centauri, but that didn't make sense because it's another Earth. So they just call it Kentaurus. It's not really Alpha Centauri, and it's not Rebia from Star Trek. There's just, I'm guessing that what we could conceivably do is the final act could be rewritten and just not use the other ones at all. Just pieces of the other ones. Maybe they're going to go to Karlat later. Because it also ended like, if you cut out the Totemus invasion, or they go to the Totemus planet entirely, you come up with a problem of it being like, it ends like Robotech. Cassins doesn't come home. He's gone. Just out there somewhere. It's like, no, we can't have it end like Robotech. No, what are we doing? This isn't Transtech. The sequence stuff doesn't even, the knitting lady stuff doesn't even, and it's all like a spy adventure. The sequence stuff is a spy adventure that's in there. There's a spy story. There's like these like turncoat Darkrai guys, and they're doing stuff in the background. And and there's a lot of stuff on view screens and a lot of stuff, people talking to each other back and forth, and I don't think that works either. It's just you have to. The only part that works with book 2 is that was kind of fun. Although there were a few parts that worked, but there's 2 kind of fun scenes. There's a scene where they go to try to get the Cervantes brothers back. It's like 10 years later they go to get Tanner, and 10 years after the events of the other story, and then all this other stuff happened. They wouldn't be that promoted, but okay, fine. Nighthand Mirrors and Slayton, who's married Slayton, goes back to the planet. Goes back to Earth. goes back to Columbia and tries to get the Cervantes brothers back to the ship, and encounters their family, their wacky family of misfits, and their niece, is James's daughter, and then the niece of the other one, or Owen's daughter, I guess is who she is, Owen's daughter, Randa, who's as smart as him, and she gets to join the mission, of course, because there's a daughter and she has to be smart. But yeah, and that was a fun scene because the little. There was also a fun scene where Beth Cassins goes to the ruins on Mars and finds the Totemus body and frozen. There's like a frozen mummified body in the lab. Finds a Totemus body, starting the Totemus mystery, which is kind of cool, but we don't want to do that. Yeah. So, and then they're gonna go and invade. It doesn't make any sense. They have like these two evil admirals. And then Everett, who would be the de facto leader if the evil admirals are gone, decides, I'm going to go along with Cassins and them over to Kala, to the planet, meet with the Queen on the other planet. She's going to train us to be warriors so we can go fight the bad guys. I was literally ripping off the plot of Armageddon right there, where Ben Affleck's character goes. And before Armageddon, I wrote these premise of these stories were before 2000. The 2015 rewrite wasn't the only one that had that. So no, that doesn't rip off Armageddon. But it seems like it does. Because they trained Ben Affleck to be a bomber pilot and he wasn't. Yeah. That's how it rips it off. That's the only part that rips it off. No, I'm thinking not of Armageddon. I'm thinking of Pearl Harbor. Now I'm thinking of another movie, Pearl Harbor, where he does that. He trained him to be a pilot. He couldn't do that. They wouldn't have done that. They wouldn't have retrained him. So the point is, Cassins and crew cannot be retrained to suddenly be butt-kicking Section 31 type Star Wars. Section 31, weird. DS9 again. But not stupid Section 31. So what I'm getting at is Cassins and the crew are scientists on a space mission. They're scientists. They're not going to get promoted to the Admiralty just so they can go fight these new alien lizard guys. That does not make any sense. No space military would ever do that. That's ludicrous. That I don't know. It's not even comedy. They just go and do it. No, don't do that. So, there's a lot of talk on view screens. There's a lot of even the space battle parts. I don't know what you would do with that. You kind of end with a pseudo cliffhanger with movie 3. But you also kind of don't, because of the way the dialogue was shot in our last moments on the movie. Could be that our main bad guy decides not to attack the Earth, and he just doesn't show up. And it's just the end. They show up, and he goes, "Oh, yeah. There's no point in me coming over here. You're just there. I'm here." Maybe it would be even more prudent to write a story in the tradition of book, the end of the book, but write it in such a way that it's kind of its own thing, and just has our characters have closure, a little more closure. You could do that, taking the best elements of these 4 stories, and saying, okay, what's the best of these 4 stories that go on into the distant future? What is the best elements of what would be fun, just to make the 4th and final act, because you'd like to have a 4th act, because it's and wrap it up. You can do something like that. But yeah, don't use originally I said, we could totally do more of these. And then toward, I think it was a couple days ago on the commentary thing, I was kind of like, no, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe the trilogy is the trilogy and that's it. And don't worry about the other stuff. Because, maybe that's fine. I'm perfectly okay with that. The trilogy being, that's what it is. It's done. So... because if it gets out of hand and it gets out over it, I mean, some of the There's so much world building and stuff going on in that book 2 that it overshadows Cassins and his crew entirely. There's even that Margit trial thing, and I don't know how the heck we would film that. That was clearly a riff on the O.J. Simpson trial. Everybody's done that to death at this point, literally, for 30 years or 40 years or more. So yeah, you don't want to do that either. You don't want to just kill off the main characters and have them have a trial. That's yeah. Or even kill off Char and the other guy. No, their story arc ends. There is closure in the third story. The Cassins and crew are on their way home, and there might be a bad guy attacking them. Maybe not. They're on their way home. That we probably do need to see that, but in a fourth story. But then what happens? They're on their way back, and everybody's okay, and they're not lost like in the end of Robotech, where they kind of fudged that ending that didn't actually. But that's another story. That's something else. And we did our own, and that's fine. But yeah, you have you have to bring your characters into that makes sense in the story. I think that the first trilogy, they're science officer Star Trek like people. They're not just going to be instantly super promoted because the other guys die. That makes no sense. And nor is the main bad guy, who is a complicated anti-hero more than a villain. The version of Nagail Pura that I created for this story, with the help of Brian's story, by the way, he's not just he's not just a misanthropic bad guy villain. He's an anti-hero. He realizes the value of his being some of the last of his race, and that he can't do what he's going to do, and he can't really disobey all of the rules, even if he wants to. And also, he's a bully, but he's a bully that wants. He's a bully character, anti-hero that wants a fair fight. He doesn't necessarily want to stomp over the little guy and blow him up. It's not fun for him. So it's not revenge. It's like, oh, he wants to keep his group alive and colonize and stuff. Yeah, he's not going to take over. He just wants to do his thing. Whereas Char and Halt are irredeemable characters, with Char being slightly less irredeemable than Halt. But Halt is completely irredeemable. He's evil. But even there, he would probably disapprove of the pseudo-fascist nature of the current administration. He'd be like, no, you're not doing it right. You failed. Anyway, so yes, you are failing on every level. You aren't evil enough. No, I am truly more evil than you. Yes, but so yeah, we don't want to do that either. We don't want a political thriller that gets people for the wrong reasons to watch our fan films. Yeah, because they're not about that. They're not about current politics at all. They're stories that were from 25 years ago or more that have been rewritten several times, and they still don't really reflect anything modern or current. It's a coincidence that Char appears to have like a thing stuck to the side of his face and one ear. It's a coincidence. The makeup came out to look like paint applications. He's not anybody, like that. He could be wearing an earbud. I don't know. That's all it is. It's an earbud. Yeah, it's an alien earbud stuck to his face. Yeah. So we have. Yeah, I think the characters worked out well. I liked that you can include. In the third act, you included DeVries, even though she's not supposed to be there, as one of the other guys because they needed her. and that other guy, Hendricks, returned because you needed him to, and the other ones came back because he doesn't. They had the whole Char and Antonio story arc ending with their breakup is funny. That's great. And more a point of that story is, it's not that they're evil because they're like courting their like bromance suggestion thing. It's not that they're evil just because they're evil. They're crazy. Yeah, and their bromance is not a healthy relationship. They're a toxic relationship, and he has to learn not to be in this toxic relationship with his friend. Just the bad guy holds Char. It's Char and Antonio. Char and Antonio are also in a bad relationship, and it's similar. They're not gay for each other. What it is they're it's about power. They each of them want to one up the other guy, and they're like, I love you because of your power. That could be politics, but it's not. It isn't really. The two bad guys, they have a sort of a gym bro attraction going on, like guys working out, that kind of thing. Except they're evil, so they have an incel bro thing going on. And Antonio finds that older lady girlfriend thing played by a Dr. Crusher action figure, but an older Dr. Crusher action figure. All the things done up to somebody else. And they have a friendship, but it's not romantic. She doesn't want him. It's not romantic. It's platonic. They're not. And I don't think him and Char is romantic. It's about power. They're not in love with each other like they want to doink each other. It's about power. They're it's like a what's that? Somebody who keeps going back to their domestic abuser over and over again because they don't love each other. They just wants power and security, which is really messed up. And he's not really giving it. He's evil. They're both evil, but Antonio's just confused, more so than. As for Cassins, he has a friendly relationship with his character, Cass. So anyway, there's the Cassins learns a little more about faith and that kind of thing. That's kind of in there. The Bentons get lines in this one. They didn't get much lines in the last one. I think what you probably want to do. This is the third one. This is the finale of this one. If you want to do a closure one, do a closure one. After this one, yeah, and then do Star Crackers. You could probably come up with a decent 90-minute to 2-hour action adventure story with the cast having a little bit of closure if you want, or you could just leave them headed toward Earth and just not address it again. Well, they got to get home to Earth, yeah, they kind of do that, and then the Cervantes. You could work this. Well, you wouldn't have the Cervantes brothers scene in there, would you? Because that's later, book 2. Yeah, and how would you do the Pura battle anyway? Because that's another thing that's funky about the final part of book 1, the last 100 pages, is that if Pura is a space bully who also is an anti-hero, more so than a villain, he's not going to attack the Earth because he's going to realize they have no Space Force. Their Space Force is completely tattered. He's going to just show up and go, oh, I can't really do anything here. I can't really fight you guys. You have, let's see, the Nevada and the New York, 2 cruiser-class spaceships. You have the Kaleen and the Hammerhead that followed you back. Yeah, you have the Victory. We took that from you. The Victory spaceship. It was the Holt's ship. He took Holt's ship from him, and then killed Holt. He didn't like Holt, so he chucked him out of an airlock. But he liked Char because he's like a Dotal. He's like a Dotal. But then Char was like, oh, I don't like you, Antonio, anymore, because guy with more power. Yeah, dude with more power. So now he's going to be on the receiving end of the Brotenpluker. He's going to receive it, not Antonio, which is just as well because Antonio's bottom's getting very sore. No, come up with something. Take the best elements of these stories here. Come up with something. But yeah, they're for the finale, for another, sure I could come up with something. Since tomorrow there ain't gonna be any filming, they just be putting it together. Well, we'll see. About this, and yeah, don't have them be admirals. Don't have them be double promoted. Don't have their kids show up. That's boring. Don't have it be like this grand, ridiculous space opera battle because you can't film that. And yeah, and that bad guy that we introduced to Lord Harlgan, he should probably return to. Yeah, instead of having 3 other bad guys from the Darkrai in the story, have him. Yeah, he shows up. And he's like, oh, I'm Harlgan. And that way you can have your Shatneroid and your Shatneroid alien bad guy, who was like Shatner-like, Kirk-like, meet up with your James Spader-like Invid soldier guy, bad guy, Spock guy. Yet again, they meet up yet again, and you have. Not only is it a Kirk Spock reunion, sort of, it's a Shatner and James Spader reunion. They haven't seen each other in 25 years, but it's not. It isn't really. But it is hilarious that was the synergy on the set when we were all. It was all like, you know what Harlgan? No. Harlgan sounds like James Spader. He's got this mysterious, dulcet voice. It just sort of says, I'm evil, yes. And conniving and sneaky. But no, yes. And then the other guy was like, well, we want to make the other guy sound like he's like a villain. Like he's sort of like an evil Kirk or something. So he's the evil Kirk. That's what he is. He's the mirror universe Kirk, basically. It's like, that's not where he really is, but. And there's this whole backstory idea that actually this action figure, which is a Kirk that's been painted, it's one of the cheapy ones from there were a bunch of them back in the day. And the joke was that in that universe, wherever they were, he's actually the grandson of Kirk and Martia who did it, and that's why he's crazy, because he's Martia, the Green Orion lady from that episode Dagger of the Mind. Not really, but oh my goodness. Well, that's pretty much it. Then we'll put movie 3 together and see what happens.